Alright guys, let's move to the next topic, which is static block. The question is, what is static block? Static block is used to initialize static data members dynamically. Means you can initialize static data member at runtime using static block. It's just like constructors. Constructors are used to initialize instance data members dynamically. When instance data members comes in the memory, immediate after them there is constructor which get execute and initialize instance data members. Similarly, when static data members comes in the memory, immediate after them static block get execute and that will initialize static data members with the dynamic value, whatever the value you want to pass there. So that is the main purpose of static block. And as you already know that whenever you run the program, class loader get execute, which is responsible to load the entire class in the memory in RAM, and it will start that with the static data members. Very first time static data members take place inside the memory known as class area, which is a common memory area, right? And just after their memory allocation, static block get execute, which is responsible to initialize static data members and will initialize them dynamically. Okay, so static block will only get execute when class will load in the memory, and class will load one time throughout its life or throughout the loading or execution of a project, one time only. Similarly, static block only execute throughout its life one time only whenever class will load in the memory. So class will only load one time during the execution of a project, and static block also execute one time only, and static block will initialize static data members dynamically in that way. Okay, now, if you are having multiple static blocks in the same class, then those will execute in the same order as you are defining them inside the class. So those are going to execute in a sequence. But as we already have seen the same scenario in init block as well, you can have multiple static block, but that is not required. Obviously, you are initializing static data members, and that you can do by one single static block only. So you don't need to define multiple static blocks. But in case if interviewer will ask you that can we have multiple static blocks, then you can say yes, we can have multiple static blocks in the same class, and those will execute in the same order as you are defining them inside the class. So static block is something which is used to initialize static data members dynamically, used to execute in a sequence if you have multiple ones in the same class, and static block only execute one time only during the execution of a project, right? There is one more key point that you should know, that is static block is a block which is even execute before the execution of main method, because it will going to execute at the time of class loading when static data members are taking place inside the uh, class area. Just after them static block get execute to initialize static data members. Okay, and then only when the all loading will complete it, then only main method get execute. So practically speaking, main method execute after the execution of static block. Okay, let's see one implementation on static block. I have a math utils class which is having a static data member pi, and static block is initializing this pi variable. There's main method which is just printing the value of pi. Okay. Now what is going to be happen when I run the program? As you guys already know that class will be loaded in the memory, and static data members take place very first time in the memory in class area, and just after them static block will get execute, that will initialize pi, also it will print static block initializing pi value, and then after other properties or other members of the class will take place in the memory, and then once the memory loading will be done, then only main method will start executing and it will print the value of pi again. Okay, so what is going to be happen? Static block is going to be execute at the time of class loading even before the execution of main method. If I run this, you can see static block is initializing pi value, and then only this main method is getting executed. Okay, if you want more clarity, you can put a breakpoint here and breakpoint here, and then you can run this program in a debug mode, and then you can see it's very first time coming to static block. Okay, and then after if I'll do step over, It is printing static block initializing, it is closing static block, and then only it is allowing main method to execute. And then it is printing their value and then it is terminating. So this is how static block works.